Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast, episode 712. Now, Tim Kennedy, Joe Rogan. Now, I love Tim Kennedy. Some people say he has some questionable views on the Second Amendment. I have not been able to find it. If you can, please send it my way. Here's the thing about Tim Kennedy. I respect him so much as a man. When he talks about what he went through as a young man and the road that he had to go down and how rough it was, I respect all that a lot. Now, before I play the main clip, this is the problem that I have with Tim Kennedy. Here, let me show you this quick.
Our military is, even though I'm so proud to be a service member, when the Army tells me to do something, I 100% have no say whatsoever. I got to go and do it. And I'm really proud to be part of the most elite fighting force on the planet.
Now, that sounds all well and good, but here's the thing. When you're on an in-depth podcast, here's what you just told me. If the Army heard that you were going to be on Rogan, they would call you in and say, hey, you're going to be on Rogan, huh? And he'd be like, yes, sir, I am. They'd be like, all right, well, here you go. This is the narrative that you're going to put forward. This is what the American people have to hear. And he would just go, okay, I'll look it over. Does it have to be verbatim? And they'd be like, no, you can make it your own words. Thank you. Bye. And he would just do that. So I'm being open as I can. When I hear something like that, kind of makes me think. I'm going to play the full clip for you guys now. Very interesting clip. Tim Kennedy, again, a great man, but definitely does what he's told. Take that for what you will. Let's get into it.
How do you solve this problem? The radicals have to be eliminated. The terrorists have to go away. That is not, I'm not conflating the Palestinians and the terrorists. Those are separate things. But if there's 2.5 million people that are living in Gaza, that are allowing 30,000 terrorists to run them, at some point, the olive branch cannot be extended from Israel when 30,000 people are using that region to launch attacks into their sovereign nation.
And we were talking about the propaganda that exists in America. What about the propaganda that exists in Palestine? I mean, what is their thought?
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, did you see the hospital that got destroyed?
Well, it didn't really, right?
No, it did not really.
No, but the New York Times said it did.
Yes,
the New
it
York
did.
Times said it was
and Congresswomen,
which is insane, and they didn't retract it. They
you
said
take
it was
horse dewormer, and Israel destroyed a hospital.
Yeah.
So evil.
It's so crazy that they printed that in the New York Times. I mean, that's the paper of record. That's the most important newspaper that we have in America in terms of if we wanted an objective source of information. Most people say, what's the best? Look, I used to deliver the New York Times when I was a kid. And I did it. It wasn't even that profitable. I delivered the Boston Globe was my main newspaper that I delivered. And then I delivered the Boston Herald as well. And then I got a New York Times route. And I was proud of that because the New York Times was the real newspaper that intelligent people read. Yeah. And it was a different plastic wrapper.
Yeah.
You got a clear wrapper for the Herald and a clear wrapper for the Globe. But for the New York Times, I got a blue wrapper. And I was like one of the people that got to deliver the New York Times. And I remember thinking as a 20-year-old kid, like, oh boy, I'm delivering the New York Times. And when I would drop the paper off at these people's houses, like, that's a fucking smart house. Yeah. These people are reading the New York Times in Boston. And I remember thinking that I was proud of that I delivered the best newspaper in the world. Really, I literally wasn't that much money, and it was a crazy route because I'd have to go like a mile in between houses. Whereas like with the Boston Globe, I'd have like 5-6 houses on one street that I would drop off papers to. And the New York Times, I'd have this fucking crazy route. I'd have to go all over the place to get rid of 100 newspapers.
Yeah, and then now in 2023, they're circulating terrorist propaganda.
Yeah, and with no
repercussions.
No repercussions. And what do they make? Did they even print a retraction? Did they say we fucked up?
You watch a missile get launched from Gaza. You know, 1/3 of all missiles that are launched from Gaza land in Gaza. Do you know think about how sad that is?
Is that real?
28% of missiles launched from Hamas land on top of the Palestinian people.
Jesus Christ.
And obviously they have no ability to direct any military target when these crappy missiles are being launched into Israel. They're just like populated area. I went and did a Fox News stand up in the city directly north of Gaza. That is the most rocketed city in all of Israel. And in like the one day that we were there, we had like 6 rocket attack sirens go off. You know, it's the weirdest thing that the Palestinians are allowing Hamas to literally kill them and pillage everything about their existence from them. Hamas is so rich and so $70 million from Iran. You know, every humanitarian ship that comes into the port, or right now that is being brought up through the Rafah Gate via Egypt into the south portion of Gaza, the moment that lands there, that is taken control of by Hamas. They then build underground infrastructure in the tunnels, and they build military infrastructure, and then they turn whatever they can into rockets. And the humanitarian aid that is supposed to be distributed to the people, they have control of. Like, they have to go, not the Palestinians. They have been so screwed by Hamas.
But the propaganda that they encounter in Palestine has to be insane.
Yeah, they believe that they're on the good side. How do they sift through fact from fiction when what they're being told and being fed is being fed to them by Hamas? Like, how do they get access to other information? And how do they ever like organize and discuss this openly without fear of losing their lives and being tortured? The only time that you had consistent water and power going into Gaza was when Israel was controlling Gaza. Now that Hamas is running it, it is nightmarish in there. But they're still in charge. And they're being protected. And here in the United States being like called freedom fighters. Like, they are barbaric murderers and absolute terrorists that want nothing besides the genocide of when I saw like the LGBTQ flags of LGBT stands with Hamas, mind is blown.
Isn't it hilarious that have you ever seen that meme that it says queers for Palestine and then Palestine for queers? Like, yeah.
They wouldn't live there hours. They'd be pushed off a rooftop or burnt alive immediately.
But they don't. But the narrative in this country is not that. Which is so strange. That like there's sort of overwhelming evidence about the approach that they have to gay people.
Yeah.
But yet somehow or another there's this I stand with Palestine thing that makes you a progressive.
Go to Tel Aviv as a gay person. Walk around with your gay pride shirt with your husband or wife of the same sex. Nobody will bat an eye at you. Nobody cares. Everybody's like, what up? Normal. Man, if she and her wife tried to walk down the road in Gaza, oh man. And it is so, this Tinder Box that is that region with the West Bank, with the Golan Heights in the north, with Hezbollah, which is being supported by Iran. They're all positioned on the border, with Iraq allowing people from Afghanistan, the Taliban, to move through. Taliban being funded by us, $40 million right now is what we're continually giving them, the Taliban.
Why do we do that?
I don't know.
What's the cynical side of you?
We want to recognize them as a legitimate government, and we are paying for them to start a democratic process of like that is I think would be the tagline of what we want them to do. What it is actually doing is the same thing that happens when we release $6 billion to Iran in exchange for hostages. They then take that $6 billion. No, they're not using that exact money to fund terrorism with Hezbollah or Hamas, but I have one bank account that has an additional $6 billion in it, and now I'm able to spend $6 billion over here to finance other things that are going to destabilize the nation that I have sworn to eradicate, Israel and America. So like, cool, I'll happily give some more money to, they've been planning this for 4 years. The Quds, like the Iranian special operations guys, training and preparing Hamas, advising on how to execute this. How do they get the intelligence to know what direction they need to fly with their paragliders, which areas, which you don't think they had scouts in all the kibbutzes around Gaza to identify which houses they're going to be targeting? How did they find all that stuff out? The people that Israel was allowing out of Gaza to work as agricultural workers, they were going into these areas, into these kibbutzes, into these houses, into these villages, doing recons for Hamas. So then when Hamas launched their attack on October 7th, they'd been funded. There's this amazing book called The New...
Real quick, just give me 30 seconds. I'm going to get right back to the clip. For him to say the 4 years and the scouts and everything like that, you would think after the attack, everybody wipes their hands clean. We're done. We've done it. This, sweep it all up. No loose ends. For him to know that means someone knew that. Who knew that? And why does he have that information now? And if someone knew, then why wasn't it acted on? I don't understand. Like, how do you find out afterwards? You know what I mean? Like, can you find that out afterwards? That sounds like something you would know. Saying that they've been prepping for 4 years. And it was actually just as Trump left office. It wasn't actually before Trump left office. It was just after Trump left office. But how do you know? I don't get it. Anyways, just questions I ask myself. Let's go.
New rules of war. And the new rules of war lines out all of the ways that America is not prepared to fight a war. By non-state actors, by corporations, by cartels, by violent extremist organizations, using proxy methods. So like we are at war with Iran, period. They are funding every single group that just attacked our American base in Syria, that attacked our American base in Iraq, that attacked and killed a bunch of Americans in Israel. That was funded by Iran and trained by Iran. But we don't have the appetite to try and fight the war that they're fighting because they're doing it in just such a, we want that World War II, right? We want Patton standing on top of a tank, coming across, being like, there's Rommel, go and get him. Like that war is never going to happen again. And we are just not ready to fight this new type of war under these new rules of war, which is fighting non-state actors, fighting proxy wars, fighting corporations funded by governments, fighting cartels that are getting subsidized by governments, all to destabilize the greatest nation to ever exist in the history of mankind, us.
Wow. Now, I do ask those questions, but again, I showed you what I showed you at the beginning with Tim Kennedy, and I didn't show you that for you to take what he has to say with a grain of salt. He has been active for a long time. He does have a lot of information. He did do so much to a terrorist organization at one point in his career that they actually called him out directly and said that they were coming after him. So he's done quite a bit. It's just very interesting, this whole thing, to hear all of this and how this is all playing out. It's a proxy. And another thing that happens, I can't play too much of the clip, but the other part that he goes into is America is not ready. And he says it's because of the readiness of the individual. And he talks about how Americans are fatter than they've ever been. They are, more defenseless than they've ever been. They're not ready for anything. And what he's talking about, obviously, I would think is a draft. Nobody's ready in terms of a draft. He was talking about families not being prepared in terms of, somebody comes to your house. It happened in Israel, so would the average American family be ready for that same type of thing? Probably not. Some, but not many. And he's right there. We are a different generation of people that are not super ready. A lot of us work out, but a lot of us don't take anything in terms of combat, learning to defend ourselves, learning how to choke someone out, or, whatever you got to do. Very small percentage of us are trained in any type of firearm safety. It's an odd time, a very odd time, which would make you think that you'd want to not do this if that is the case. And he's coming from two places, right? He's talking about how America's not ready, but then also talking about how it has to happen. I don't know. It's very interesting to me. And I get where he's coming from. I mean, he's a military guy. So, he's the hammer. It's a nail. What else is a military guy going to think? You got to go. Eliminate the enemy, like he said. And, and a lot of people, a lot of the public feels the same way. Are they willing to go down there and do it? Not a chance. Let's be real. A lot of people who are ripping down posters and putting up posters and going to protests and this and that, they're not ready for the real thing. It's fun to do it here. Clicks, likes, views, retweets. It's fun to do it here. Gives you a sense of virtue. You get to live vicariously through the innocent people that are perishing somewhere else in the world. You get to stand up for them without having to stand in front of them. Let's be real, right? That's both sides. Man. Well, Tim Kennedy. This is the first clip I'm pulling off of this. I'm going to be doing a lot more. And again, I respect Tim Kennedy as a man, but it seems like he will do whatever he's told. And if I told you, think about this with the clip I played at the beginning. If Joe Rogan said, I will do whatever the army says, whatever they say, I have no say in it, you'd be like, oh, I can't trust Joe Rogan ever again. If Rachel Maddow said that, you'd be like, whoa, she just said it out loud. So when you hear someone like this guy saying it, and then he's like, and I got a bunch of information for you, it's like, okay, I guess I'll listen to it and I'll sift through what I can. I won't say that I don't believe him, because I do. I think if anybody has access to this type of information, it's him. But I also think he'll do whatever he's told to do. And I don't think that just stops at the battlefield. You know what I mean? There's a mental battlefield that needs occupying from people in these positions. That's all I'm saying. But otherwise, let me know what you think in the comments, man. He said a lot. And the one thing I love that he said, he's not mixing up the Palestinians with Hamas. There's so many people who are on the side of Israel that will not stop meshing these two people together. You cannot do that. They're not the same. They're not. Go to Canada and just go and assume everybody backs everything Justin Trudeau and his government is saying. And watch how you get met with insults and force, and people will be upset. They'll be like, that guy doesn't speak for me. You can do the same thing in America. You can do the same thing in South America. You can do the same thing in Africa. These government bodies, and use that loosely in regards to Hamas. They were elected, but I wouldn't quite call them a governing body. These government bodies are not aligned with the people. Very, very rarely are they aligned with the people. And I just love that out of everything he said that, because that's something that a lot of people need to hear. You can't, I've said it before in videos, you can't look at every Palestinian and say that they're a terrorist. You can't look at every Jewish person and say that every Jewish person is on board with what's going on, because I'm sure that's not true. I'm sure if you go to Israel, not every person's on board for what's going on and they want things done differently, but they also hate what's happened. People hate when people say it, but it is complicated. It's a complicated thing. If you are an innocent person in Israel who doesn't want to see other innocent people get hurt, the way that you're coming at this situation is complicated. You're like, well, leave them alone. Go get Hamas. Also, if there's people who support what they're doing, I don't like those people. But the people who are just living their life, those people are okay. That becomes a very complicated thing. And I'm sure there's people in Israel that feel that way. Oh, man. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like the episode. Subscribe. And other than that, I am out.